Welcome to the Revenue Rewired podcast, hosted by StringCan Interactive's visionary CEO, Jay Feitlinger, and no-nonsense COO, Sarah Shepard. We're here to accelerate your revenue and give your marketing purpose. All right, hello and welcome everybody to this next episode of the Revenue Rewired podcast. Hi, Jay.
Happy February.
Happy
Can't
February.
believe it.
Do we feel like the tiniest bit guilty about all these? Oh, did you see there's an image going around now that says Miami has opted out of winter,
I
and it
did see
was this
that.
this entire country is just ice cold, and in Miami's like 78 degrees.
I'm just so
It's
blown
supposed to be.
away that January's already gone. Like this is insane how fast this year is flying by already.
I know. I had a friend reach out to me, another COO, saying it's time for coffee again now that we're a month into the year. I'm like, oh my gosh, I am
Goodness.
not ready for that, but I'm looking forward to coffee with him. But, all right. Well, this is kind of a coffee chat. Hopefully you guys are enjoying this podcast so far. But today we want to kind of dive in a little deeper with some pretty fun stuff. And we want to talk about the AI marketing stack and what's actually working for B2B in 2026. Um, Crazy to think, our agency has really dug our heels into just exploring AI. It's just been full on experimentation for at least 3.5 years now, which might surprise people because we don't really talk about it externally a whole lot. But part of that is, we like to explore. And Jay, even when I started here 10 years ago, has always had the mentality of we want to experiment on ourselves first. And so, if you've been following AI or trying to learn it, keeping up with all the news, it's a lot. And so we've kind of felt like, I think, what is it, Ryan says that the sand is shifting under our feet as we're
Hmm.
walking. It kind of feels like that. And so we wanted to make sure we were comfortable enough in the changes and staying somewhat as bleeding edge and leading edge as we could in order to roll out some of this stuff to our clients. And last week, I actually saw a LinkedIn post about how agencies are needing to package AI achievements as outcome based. And what's funny is we've been working toward that for just over a year and a half, I'd say. And so we want to tell you guys a little bit about what exactly you can do tactically with AI as a tool to achieve some of these outcomes. And Jay, I know you recently had a conversation. People just love pulling us out of thin air and saying, "Hey, can we talk about AI?"
Yeah.
I even get like restaurant servers because of my wine GPT, where I take pictures of menus and I tell my GPT like what wine should I order? Here's my dinner. And they're like, I really got to start using it. And I'm like, yeah, you do. It's pretty
I mean,
cool.
it's amazing.
But you
Well, I th
had a conference last week, so tell us about that.
well, I think the conversation again, you can look at this a couple different ways. So the main elements of that story was the person I was talking to was focusing on Google Ads. That was the main marketing strategy, and was very kind of blinders on regarding the world as Google Ads, and noticed over the last probably 6+ months that the more they spend, they're not seeing the same amount of leads coming through from the campaigns. And the question to me was, what am I doing wrong around Google Ads kind of mindset? And what I always do with people, whenever they ask me a question that, focused, I always take a step back and I'm like, okay, before we dive into being the problem, are we even asking the right question? And what's funny is, and luckily for me, we've been so involved in AI now for so long. We're seeing both on the B2C and the B2B side, consumers in general, I think are enjoying that kind of one click, instant answer, instant gratification mindset between Google, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, whatever, tool you want to use. And, this person has been spending days and days trying to figure out what's going on and having calls with Google and blah, blah, blah. And I basically posed the question of, is it possible that it's not really that campaign? It might be you're looking at it the wrong way, or maybe you're still getting in aggregate, like holistically, you're still getting from your website the same quantity of leads or maybe more. It just how you're looking at attribution might not be coming from the ads because they're coming in through, AI influenced traffic. And literally, like he went like white for a second, and then like smacked his head, and then told me a few days later it was pretty much exact, almost like 90% of the issue was that, where they were seeing a lot of traffic coming in through like ChatGPT and then through source data from Google's Gemini and Instant Answers and whatnot. And so I think for me, it's just amazing to me how people that start with AI and think about, how they can use it for their business, they're so laser focused on all the shiny objects, than others that are so focused on maybe more traditional marketing efforts or sales efforts, and they're not coming at it from an AI point of view. They're just doing the same stuff and just doing more and more work to try to, catch up or make up for any kind of missed data they're seeing, are not thinking about AI helping them. So I just have found that, not that obviously AI is the answer to everything, but it's just very interesting to see how this one technology, this one tool, is causing so much uproar, good or bad, and really disrupting the entire market. And so I'm so grateful that we jumped on this so early on. I know it was a scary thing at first, like AI is taking over everything, but I think that we've embraced it. We've gotten so comfortable and confident with it. I think it's a very positive thing, not only for us practicing on ourselves, to your point before, but also how we can help guide our clients. Again, it's not always the right answer, but definitely it could influence a lot of decisions.
Yeah, and what's cool, we want to share a couple of very specific tactics that we're working with a couple of clients on. And mind you, these have been maybe a year plus in the works. And the only reason these clients are able to implement some of these AI-based tactics, is what I'll call it, is that they've been prepared, by us, knowing what was necessary to make the tool useful. So, it's not just implementing, like you and I have talked about a couple of things that AI has sort of rolled out in some ways without permission that
Hmm.
have been a little jarring, I'd say. So one of those, to your conversation with that gentleman, was looking at some of the ads. For example, AI is just rolling out some automated updates and optimizing. I'm throwing up some air quotes here, people, optimizing
You spend
those
your more money.
ads. Yeah. And a couple of our clients were like sending us screenshots of these heinous looking ads. And unfortunately, like with Facebook, it's on or off. And so it's not quite good enough to leave it on without some oversight and catching it. Is it better to have it on or off? It's really a personal choice, I think. Are you willing to experiment and see if that's willing to drive some data and some insights maybe that you wouldn't have gotten without the AI feature? But there's one big one that a client, very forward thinking. And I think, let me caveat though, with any kind of new tool usage, we're all still figuring this out. So as an agency, we work really, really hard to have a lot of the answers, but we still don't have all of the answers. And no one does. And so part of that is be wary of anyone who acts like or says they have all of the answers. Not even Sam Altman has all the answers right now. So just be wary of that, like overconfidence in this tool, because it's constantly changing. And Jay, I want to pause there. Like, do you agree or disagree with that? Like, is there a level of confidence that's kind of like red flag?
I mean, we've had this chat. We probably need to have a whole dedicated podcast and just talking about the hallucination factor of AI, because they're tripping over themselves as well, and so confidently giving answers. So that's a whole nother conversation. But I think you're right. Again, like I've never been a big fan of putting 100% reliance on something. And that's why I think, AI is so exciting to me, is that, you still need a very strategic brain to drive the answer you're seeking. And then I think you need to have a challenger mindset to be pushing back, because I'm just still amazed at how often it's so wrong. Obviously, when you get into any kind of emotional conversation, that's a whole nother discussion. But I think I definitely on this one do agree with you that, not that I'm paranoid, but I do find myself having to spend a little extra time than I want to on just kind of like really checking things because I'm still amazed how often it's not fully accurate, but it definitely helps me a ton get a lot closer to the end result that I'm looking for. But just not always on the, straight, you know, as a crow flies type of situation.
Hmm. Yeah, and the more we use it, the more each tool has a specific use case that it's more apt or more suitable for, I guess I should say. So one of the tactics that we've helped a client roll out is just straight up AI consulting. And the reason for that is they are so open, they so want to figure out what to do with it next. Um, and they're willing to have those conversations with us that are super specific to that. They're looking for experimentation ideas. Um, and so we rolled out basically a strategy brief that is AI driven based upon a ton of inputs that we had. So we documented pretty much everything. They've been with us for years and created special GPTs and special prompts and a very strategic process in developing this initial draft to help guide those consultative conversations. So it's not just like water cooler talk. It's here's what we did, here's what we pulled from AI, here are your optimization opportunities, specifically looking at that tool with your brand. So that tool is an elevation to what's already out there. It's in addition to, and you have to structure it in a way that makes sense. It's like if people looked back at quote old SEO and saw how much change occurred once they implemented some best practices, because ultimately machines and tools are the ones giving us these responses. And Jay, I know you've had experience with that, what we're calling internally right now. We know this is a terrible name and we're marketers, so forgive us. But it's called the vision brief.
Ugh.
And it's I know we're working on it.
It's
But
fine.
from the consultation perspective, it's been really nice to have a client that open to having those conversations.
Yeah, and I think to me, it's like, for those that are listening to this, this obviously is an example of how an outside partner understands AI could really help you. But I think from, your point of view, I think for me, when I got really into the AI a few years ago, one of my favorite features, for example, like talking about ChatGPT, for example, one of the more popular tools out there is building out a custom GBT on there. And I basically took it and I took all my favorite influencers out there on the mentorship or advisor side and basically created a GBT off of that to help become a consultant for me. Because again, we're expected on behalf of our clients to be, that consultant. And every once in a while, it's kind of nice to have a system that you can rely on when you're out and about, just to pose an interesting question and see if it helps you come up with a new idea. And I think for our clients who are not, very active yet in there, it's just like I don't even know where to start. And I think of Sarah's point here, I think this is probably one of my favorite features of using AI is that kind of a consulting mindset of helping you get first of all, make sure you're asking the right questions. And then you're coming up with some really unique ways of a challenger mindset of how you can build out the system to figure out how you can leverage it to help grow yourself, your team, and your business. So I think that this, vision brief process that we're doing on behalf of our clients, yes, to Sarah's point, it's very AI influenced, but driven by all of our years of experience doing very strategic processes for our clients. I just am so blown away by how it elevates and helps us, enhances our recommendations in very unique ways. So I think it's one of my favorite ways from a tech stack perspective of relying on AI to help you think about consulting from getting from point A to point Z a lot faster.
Yeah, and I think what's different about this than like Googling yourself, is it sort of removes a little bit of those extras. It's kind of like what I would see is what anyone else would see, regardless of potentially geography if they ask the same question. Whereas a search is more specific, it's got more information in, but AI is then giving you a consultative approach. It's not yet, caveat, not yet trying to sell you anything, but as we wrote about last week, that's changing. And So we'll save that for another day. But moving on from consultation now is we actually have two clients that are undergoing what we've got as an AI audit. And it sounds simple. It's not the days of old where you got these emails out of nowhere that are like, your website needs optimizations and I can help you and reach out to me. And here's, the 800 things that are broken on it. I I just hated that. So overwhelming. But this is more specific in that we tailor those audits to the outcomes that would help drive success in those clients' businesses. So one client would really like us to focus instead of the whole business on marketing. And I think what's smart about that is it's where they can control the space, but they can also then show results to their higher ups and their leaders and sort of get change management and buy off through a like snapshot of the AI audit. And Jay, I don't know if you have any thoughts on like why would anyone at this point that whether they're not using it, let's say someone's not using AI, they don't have an AI champion and they're just happy and fine with the tactics that are going on right now. Why would someone even want to do an AI audit?
I'd be very disappointed if I met someone in marketing or sales, even leadership, that said that, where they're like, I don't want to grow.
You just used the
Um,
dad word disappointed.
did
Like,
I? Gosh, well, I had
I'd be
child
very
my older daughter an hour
disappointed.
ago, so that's probably why.
Oh, that's why.
Um, no, but I just think it's like if you assume that the way you're doing it today is going to get you from where you are today to where you want to go, I think that that's crazy thinking. Just the world is moving so fast and there's so many variables out of your control. And so I think to your point there on the audit side, I know some people are very against the word audit. They're thinking about like if you're familiar with like McKinsey, it's going to be a 300-page report that no one's going to read. What I love about this, if you instruct the AI systems the right way, it'll output things that maybe push you a bit, but it'll be more realistic. It's not going to be like, hey, you're in the wrong industry. You should change your business name and move to, India. Like you can give it some, bumpers. So it's giving you things that are somewhat realistic. But I think, with that audit mindset, there is a whole like readiness element to it where I think, that I've met with so many marketers and even people in sales, even some leadership people, and they're like, the owners or the CEO or whoever is just really against it. Maybe they're kind of an older school traditional mindset. They don't trust the machine, whatever the situation might be. And so the culture of that business might be very against it. But that being said, I think more often than not, if you position the recommendations in a way that opens people's eyes up, I think there's a really interesting opportunity. Maybe it's not good for 2026, but might be good to think about for next year. And I find that if you frame it up the right way, as far as like, for example, like if you're the CEO, especially if you're a founder CEO, no one likes missing opportunities. And if you frame it up, okay, here are three of your biggest competitors, and you're really worried that they're ahead of you. You're doing maybe 60 million, they're doing 90 million, and you don't understand why because you feel like your company's better. I think if you look at things from that lens, it'd be interesting to understand what it's going to take for you all to embrace AI because very likely those companies are fully embraced and it's part of their culture. And if you don't allow your team members to be innovative and think about growth, I think you're going to be not surprised when you're left behind even further year over year. So I think for me, what I love about this, this other offering that we're providing our clients is they don't have to worry about, which platform to have to use. It's more about we rely on you all because you have investments in so many different AI systems and tools and agents and whatnot. We want your help to help us figure out how we can become, more prepared for this, and then where we're looking at obstacles or opportunities around our growth vision. And that's why I love this offering because, if you ask it the right questions and you keep on pushing back more and more, and then you find a way to take a lot of this information and digest it and then present back to your client knowing where they are and where they want to go or your own company. I just feel like it's so valuable to kind of help look at things from a different point of view. And then if you add any kind of source data, especially for those that are more like the COOs or CFOs who just don't trust it at all, if you could be like, don't kill the messenger. We did this extensive audit ourselves through whatever tool you want to recommend, either through us or yourselves. And if you can prove to them, here's some really, credible data that basically validates this concern that if we don't embrace whatever the thing is, we're going to be even more concerned next year when we start looking at annual planning and whatnot. So I just think this is one of my favorite things to do because as an entrepreneur myself, even though I don't always love hearing some of the scary things about, us or our clients' business where they're, kind of not fully optimized per se, I would much rather know here is where I'm missing opportunities. I could choose to apply those things to my business, or I could choose not to. But I would much prefer to understand and know, so I'm not just spiraling and guessing, what the situation might be. Because it's amazing when I look at leaders and have these conversations with them. It's like where they point the fingers always blows my mind. And it's often not the real result or real reason why they aren't having good results. So again, I think that's why the one benefit of AI not being very empathetic, it doesn't care about hurting feelings as long as you don't give it that bumper lane or bumpers. Because I have seen people use it where it's like, I am not looking for you to tell me how I'm doing a bad job. Tell me how wonderful I am because they need an ego boost. Obviously, we don't use it that way. We use it more about from the audit point of view of uncovering opportunities and obstacles.
Yeah, and I kind of think like now, to your point, if no marketer has at least touched AI, bad on your company if they're not helping support that.
Hmm.
And the other point would be like do it yourself, but ignoring AI would be like ignoring a Google ad platform rollout for the very first time. It is a tool. It's important. You have to learn how to use it. And the other part would be like you mentioned, I would want to know. I would want some awareness of like where my business needs help. It'd be like driving with the check engine light on and
Yep.
never taking it in. You just know there's something wrong. And I don't think there's a lot worse than as a leader, you know something's wrong and you just kind of keep going on like it's going to solve itself. Like, unfortunately, no, that's why you are where you are in your business is you kind of have to be the one to say, "Hey, I got to pull this band-aid off, guys. We got to work on this." And, AI can do that for you if you have the right bumper lanes, as you say, or guardrails. Like there's just a lot. We could go on and on and on this topic, but I want to share the last tactic that we've been working on with a client, and it's a little more involved, and it definitely requires some serious partnership. And I think that's the other piece is that AI, as we're all learning together, there are parts of it that are going to keep changing. And thankfully, this client is super innovative and forward thinking. And we've been doing this, let's see, almost a year already, which is a very tailored AI driven ABM strategy. And we've licensed a couple tools to achieve this. And now we're finding funny enough, we've done it for so long, we're experiencing the ceiling of AI, which is fascinating. And I don't know that it's something any of us considered when we went about this process. And I'm going to pause. Like, Jay, when we built all this out, you were very involved last, like March, I think, when we started, or maybe it was
Hmm.
February. Shoot, could have been earlier. But based upon where we are now, and where we came from with this process, what did you kind of see happening with the tool usage and the outputs and the outcomes from this very tailored ABM strategy?
I love that. Well, first of all, do what ABM is, just in case people aren't
Yeah, my
familiar with
bad. My
that.
bad. Jargon.
No,
We
it's
said no jargon. Here we
no, it's
are.
so funny because I speak a lot in various different business groups and whatnot, and ABM is one that's been around for a while. So basically, it's account-based marketing, and I'm a huge fan of it, especially if you're on the B2B side and your clients are mid to enterprise and or bigger. Again, I think the motivation around ABM that I love, and I'll jump into your question in a second, Sarah, but I want to make sure I explain this, is I'm thinking we've all had the situation where you have an amazing relationship with a certain contact at a company, and they're basically your champion to help you on recommending new products or services. And they're the ones that are basically your internal ambassador to help sell what you need to do through them. Well, imagine if that person now left, which obviously, again, people typically don't stay in jobs for more than a few years. Now, all of a sudden, you lost your main contact. What do you do? And so, the account-based marketing model is so smart because it basically helps you develop relationships across various different roles and departments. So that way, if that happens, in theory, you're okay. But also, what I love about it is it matches you. So, again, like in my role, I would want to be connected with like the C-suite, whereas my director of strategy and client services would be not as much focused on that, but maybe more at the VP level. And so you kind of can map your organization to your client's organization to have very appropriate relationships. So I wanted to explain that because what happens often is that a lot of times, our clients we work with, if we did a good job, and more often not than we do, is we have like the ICP, their ideal client profile. And, finding those people, in pre-AI days would be as, popping on LinkedIn or reading press releases. It's a very manual process. You can definitely leverage in tech stacks tools like Zoom Info, for example. You can buy a license and spend, a couple $1,000s a quarter and get access to those databases and whatnot. But, that's where I think AI is so exciting. And so I think to Sarah's point, a year ago, we really pushed the various different AI systems and building agents and whatnot to help us kind of automate some of this process. And so we would take our normal strategy process and have really smart, meaningful data around here's the company, here is their mission, vision, values, their ideal client profile, the pain points they solve, like all the things you can think about from like a kind of a vision brief mindset. And if you feed that in and then you ask the right questions, the system come back and it basically can help you design how can you automate, finding those people. And that's where it gets a little problematic. And so I think again, it's getting a lot better. But from the Sarah's comment on hitting the ceiling, that was one of the bigger problems we had because the system wasn't really designed for it to do a lot of that. And more often than not, mainly due to computing power issues and memory problems and whatnot with those platforms, after a couple weeks of trying to get hundreds and hundreds of contacts back out of it and direction of where to find these people, it started regurgitating the same people over and over again, or it would just freeze constantly. And so over the year, we just luckily never gave up and we kept on working on improving the process. And I think just a year later, I'm personally blown away by how much more advanced these systems are. But again, the systems are only as good as the computing power it has, the prompts that you're giving it, the data you're feeding it, and the data has access to. And I think again I think we're going to see probably in the next year or two a significant leveling up with all of this because that's really the main problem with AI. I feel like right now is just the computing power. Is you're going to see larger and larger data centers being built around the world. We're already seeing here. We live in Arizona, and so we're seeing a ton of that happening here. I just think it's going to be very interesting to kind of see, where that's all going. But that's where I think, again, you can rely on AI so well where you can remove a lot of the excuses that, marketing and or sales departments have. Because again, if you understand the right question and you feed it into the right system, the AI can help you get a lot closer to the answer so much faster than numerous people could do. So that's one of the services that we're offering that I'm so excited about because it ties so well into the whole demand generation side, from helping our clients on the sales piece of it, of getting connected to the right people and not having to waste time. And again, I think also on that, one of our clients we did this for, it was a very complicated situation where, they're in the manufacturing space, and they only can provide services to other manufacturing firms that have their exact type of product. And so the problem is, again, before AI, with that example, which is kind of where what helped us really fine tune this offering, is we can, again, Zoom Info, LinkedIn, you can go on all these tools. And so the amount of hours we'd have to spend on finding manufacturers and then going through each of them and figuring out if they even offer or have a need for what our client provided, we were finding that about 90% plus of the contacts we were finding that on paper seemed like they would be a fit, doing the research, they weren't. And so we built this amazing system where we would have an agent, an AI agent in place that once we fed it the right strategy and found the right people, it could then go out there and automate that through either looking at their websites or press releases or whatever the details might be, and validate if there is a connection here where this is a likely good client. So now all of a sudden we're going to get probably a lot lower quantity of potential leads to go after, but the quality goes now from being only 5 or 10% quality that would be valid to now like 90%. And so from a client point of view, not only are you giving them a much better list of contacts, but you're also reducing friction of having them wasting time, of having to spend all this time looking at these various companies and realizing that very few of them are valid. Now they're like, oh my, every single one is. So it's just amazing how it's the AI systems for the way we do our services for our clients and how other companies could leverage it as well. It does make you so much more efficient in operations, marketing, and sales.
Yeah, and AI is not automation necessarily, but it can definitely help. And the two are tools that can be used together or separate. And so we're finding there are definitely ways in which AI has some gaps and that it's not like the whole agent conversation. It's not yet to a point, and I use AI a lot to plan travel, which does have limitations. Again, we will talk about some crazy drama about AI, but it isn't at the point yet where it could book a flight for me. And so that is like some next level stuff. And so I think if you follow along with it, you'll get a little bit more excited because you'll see where the opportunities are. I do think humans are going to evolve with AI because we're just going to keep pushing the ceiling of it. And that's what's really exciting. So we're not the doomsdayers like we were when we started this process 3 years
Yeah.
ago. We thought we were all going to like be out of a job in 6 months, but now we're just really embracing it and trying to make it work for us because that's really what it was built for, I think. So,
You brought up a really good point, Sarah. And actually, this was interesting. I had a chat with another person I met at a business event, and he was um, actually roughly my age, so in early 50s, but in kind of different industry, and he was a bit reluctant and didn't see the value of it. And so I gave him the example of, okay, imagine tomorrow you had, a robot in your home that was, cooking you food and cleaning and folding your laundry and cleaning your house and maybe driving you to your meeting, like all those things. Yeah, that's crazy. I'm like, well, it's not really that crazy. This is probably maybe a year or two away, but let's ignore that. Just pretend for a second, sir, that this actually is happening tomorrow. If you with your current level of understanding of AI and how, all the machine learning stuff works, if this happened to you tomorrow, how much more extreme would that experience be than someone like me? And he's like, oh, it'd be great for you. I'm like, well, the main reason why is that I've been embracing it. And so I'm not saying you should only leverage AI and all these various different details, either personally and or professionally. Like I think personally, Sarah, the travel, I think stuff in all those personal areas is so beneficial where you can have it act like a travel concierge and whatnot. But I think for us, we're so much more comfortable with all this because we have ingrained it into our lives in a very meaningful, intentional, and positive way more often than not. I know it's not always perfect, but I think for us is that it's not as scary. And so I said to him, I'm like, I think just, where the world's heading, this is not when this is happening now. And so I think, if your intention is not to go and live in the mountains in a tent and you want to be part of, modern society, you having no understanding of how any of this stuff works, I think is a huge disservice to yourself and your family and your friends and the company you own and or work at. So I think, again, I don't want that being the main motivation of why people are leveraging this stuff today. But I think now that we're in 2026 and it's February, I just think that if those that haven't really embraced this, I need to start ASAP. I think they're going to be disappointed when it's going to hit them in the head, where it's going to really significantly impact our personal lives in, I think, a positive way.
Well, and the other piece of that too is it's really going to suck if you're running a business and you kind of thought, I'll figure this out another time. It seems like a heavy lift, and your customers start asking for it. And you have a competitor who's kind of been maybe a little more forward with it, a little more innovative, maybe a little more experimental. Even just that little bit will create a full-on chasm between you and your current customers
Yep.
because it's not about whether you want to adopt it or not. To your point, it's here. You better figure out a way to get on the bandwagon or explain why you're not
Yeah, and
or
I
make
think
the
on that note,
value.
to wrap this one up, then it's like, clearly we love this. And so, if you are in a situation with your company and you're just not sure where to start, we'd be happy to have a conversation. Just reach out to us. I do that, at least probably once or twice a week where I speak with someone that either owns a business or they're a business executive. And we go down these interesting rabbit holes and I try to avoid overwhelming them. But I just usually like, here's a good first step. Tell me a situation that's coming up with you soon. I try usually focusing on personal. That seems to be less scary for people for some reason. And usually it's like travel or planning a date night or doing something, special with my child, whatever it might be. And I walk them through a very simple way of how they can use it. Then they go and try it. And then they're like, oh my gosh, now I get it. It's just you just gotta try it once. And I think if you do it the right way, you can find significant value.
Yeah, and the other quick way is we have an AI readiness assessment on our website that's like 5 minutes, and you could take that. Any of your leaders can take it and just kind of see where you are. Like that's a great place to start. Is
I love
where
that.
am I in this journey?
Hmm.
So, well, this was hopefully not TLDR, but if it was, we have 2 minute AI podcasts that go out every Tuesday, so you can listen to those too if you made it this far. But we are hoping that this topic just keeps evolving and that you evolve with us, everybody. So thank you, Jay. This was a great pod.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate you. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Revenue Rewired podcast. Send us your questions to podcast@stringcaninteractive.com and follow us for more insights to drive your business forward.